We have breaking news, everyone. Israel says Iran launched missiles at it in the first such bombardment since a ceasefire took effect in April. Let's bring in MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid, who's joining us from Dubai. So, Inzamam, what do we know?
Yes, so as you mentioned, Alex, Iran seemingly has launched missiles and drones into Israel. Israel say tonight that they have been intercepting those missiles and drones. And as you mentioned, this is the first time that Iran has carried out attacks into Israel since the ceasefire began on the 8th of April. Now, this comes after Israel today specifically targeted southern Beirut and the outskirts of Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. We know that that war has been raging on between Israel and Hezbollah, and Lebanon has been battered as a result of Israeli airstrikes inside of the country. Many people have been displaced as a result, but we've seen the fighting in Lebanon ramping up over the last couple of weeks, despite all the peace talks around ceasefire happening between Lebanon and Israel and the US, but Hezbollah has not been involved in those talks. And as a result, Iran has been saying, if the fighting continues inside Lebanon, then we will not be in a position to negotiate with the US. Now, today, it's got to a point where Iran feels it needs to intervene, and as a result has launched these rockets into Israel. Now, the latest from the Israeli military is that they say they've intercepted all of the missiles launched from Iran so far. Now, earlier today, Alex, I have to mention that we were getting signals that a potential attack was coming from Iran. Iran's parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Ghalibaf, had said earlier today that they are neither committed to a ceasefire nor believe in dialogue, and by demonstrating through the naval blockade and violation of agreements regarding Lebanon that they only understand the language of power, specifically talking about the United States. He went on to say the naval blockade against the Iranian nation and the America's green light today to the Zionist regime turn American and regime bases and assets in the region into legitimate targets. The hand of our armed forces is open as always. So certainly a threat towards the end of that message. And clearly tonight now, Iran has decided to launch attacks into Israel. It'll be interesting to see whether Israel does decide to respond. It's most likely that they will, and whether in fact the US military will also get involved. And if the US military does get involved and they carry out attacks from air bases within Kuwait and Bahrain, then we could see an Iranian retaliation into the Gulf countries once again, as we've seen over the last 10 days or so. Remember, Kuwait's international airport was struck where people were killed and dozens of people were injured as a result. So this will be a tense night tonight as Iran launches these rockets into Israel, and we'll have to wait and see what the response is from the Israeli military. Alex.
What do you think is going to be the greater Middle East response and reaction to this? I guess more reaction than response. We hope that it doesn't become any more of a complicated situation there with any military action. But the reaction will be what?
Well, look, I think there'll be a lot of concern this evening right across the Gulf regions, particularly here in the UAE, because they will not want to see a further escalation of this conflict. Remember, Alex, over the last 10 days, we've seen that kind of tit-for-tat fighting. I mean, I think it's actually been more than tit-for-tat, given the rocket fires we saw on Kuwait's airport, given the attacks in Bahrain, given the US attacks on military bases in southern Iran. It's really ramped up over the last 10 days or so, but it hasn't led to all-out conflict. It's not led to all-out war. And I think that maybe gives us a signal that President Trump is still very keen to get a deal and to get out of this conflict. But this move by Iran tonight and a potential retaliation from Israel, if we do see that, could potentially see us with an escalation in this conflict. And that will be a major concern for many countries in this region.
Does that then lead, Inzamam, to a major concern that there could be a widening fissure being created between the goals of President Trump and the goals of Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, we've seen that kind of tension between those two leaders over the last couple of weeks. Remember, there was a very tense and heated phone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a few days ago, where President Trump was unhappy with his escalation and wanting to send in more troops into Israel and this attack on Beirut. Look, today, the Israeli military carried out that attack on Beirut. We haven't had a response directly from the president as to how he feels about that, but we do know there have been significant disagreements between the two men. So I think we'll have to see what the Israeli response is, whether Benjamin Netanyahu speaks directly with Trump to see how Israel can respond. But certainly there will be those cracks growing between the two men as a result of this.